also named the glorious call of the church inside the prison to be a sign, foretaste, and an instrument of God's kingdom. Along with the challenges of the church inside the prison, we also must learn how volunteer ministers and chaplains might join with ministries that seek to impact the lives of men and women in the prison system. This outreach is all done from the recognition of God's heart for the incarcerated. In the Gospel of Matthew 25, 1 through 46, Jesus tells the parable of the sheep and the goats, giving us the vivid picture of how Christ identifies with those who are in need of basic goods and even those who are incarcerated. From this scripture, we should recognize that God has a special place in his heart for those who are hurting under the weight of incarceration, even to the point of identifying himself with them. As volunteers who enter the prison, it is important to remember that we are there to serve Christ and his purposes. Many volunteers enter the prison to lead the Christian services with a local church-based ministry. These volunteer ministries will have the opportunity to connect with believing inmates and share fellowship with them during services. The inmate church is always grateful for outside volunteers and ministers, seeing their gift of time and presence as a sign of being loved and remembered by the church. Volunteers should be mindful that prison churches are usually made up of inmates from diverse Christian backgrounds. Just to give you a picture, among those who gather for church at my facility, we have Lutherans, Pentecostals, non-denominational believers, Mennonites, Charismatics, Baptists, Presbyterians, and Methodists. For the edification of the church, it would be wise to avoid teachings that are filled with divisive rhetoric or controversial topics. Unlike the churches outside, which tend to be culturally, politically, economically, socially, and educationally similar, the inside church is an eclectic mix of differences. Although having one major thing in common, being incarcerated, inmate churches are made up of individuals who may have different views on negotiable issues in the church. It would be wise to hold lightly these negotiable topics while speaking in the prison. Therefore, please do not push your views on such things as speaking in tongues, infant versus believers baptism, female pastors, and other doctrinal beliefs. Certainly you have the ability to gather together in the outside church with people who believe as you. But the inside church does not have that flexibility. We strongly advise you to avoid proselytizing. This means do not enter the prison so that you can force your views on others. In fact, chaplains of Christian chaplains and coaching are subject to discipline and possible expulsion if they violate this code of conduct. Keep the focus on redemption offered through Jesus Christ. A powerful way of showing vulnerability is sharing your personal testimony, especially if your testimony involves encountering God in a time of brokenness and struggle. Remember this, though. A story is just a story unless Jesus is at the center of it. It is your personal encounter with Jesus that makes it a testimony. Otherwise, it is just an interesting story. If you can describe what your life was like before Jesus, how you encountered Jesus, and how your life has changed since that encounter, then you have a testimony. If Jesus is not the hero, you only have a story. Some of the inmates most loved volunteers are those who have come out of incarceration and know firsthand what it is like to have been truly changed by Jesus. As volunteers who come to the facility on a regular basis, you will have the opportunity to bring a kind and generous energy to the prison staff. I have heard of volunteers who regularly bring the security guards donuts and cookies. Small acts of kindness can go a long way for the staff, who often work long hours and have their own struggles. Acts of kindness to staff will go a long way in earning their respect, and there's another benefit too. You are deeply dependent on security staff to orchestrate the movements that allow church services to occur. Give them a reason to support your efforts. The chaplains in the facility where you volunteer are often stretched by the obligations of managing all of the religious programs in the prison. Therefore, they do not often attend church meetings in the prison. As volunteers, you are providing an important service of grounding and leading the prison church. The way you can help the chaplain serve the church inside is to reach out to him and ask his view on the health of the church. What does the chaplain believe the church needs from you? Sometimes chaplains have an inner track on what has been going on in the prison, giving important insight on how the volunteers might serve the church in their pastoral presence, modeling the Christian life, preaching and teaching. Also share with the chaplain the positive and negative things you notice in the services. Ask for advice on what you can do to make it better. By working together, we can create a united front that builds up what God is doing inside the walls. Another way of supporting the life of the church inside is working with the chaplain to explore if there's any resources needed for ministry inside. The chaplain is able to arrange donations and get items into the facility. One example of this is the card ministry at my facility. Church volunteers have raised funds and donated cards to hand out to inmates who request them. Chaplains are allowed to give out Bibles to inmates, and if the facility is large enough, the chaplain's area will include a library. Supporting the ministry inside by making sure that inmates have access to quality Bibles and study material is a great way to deepen the faith of the inside church you serve. As Christian volunteers, your ultimate mission should be to see the thriving and maturing of believers, both inside and out. I would encourage you to come to the prison as learners of the life and culture inside the walls. Seek to understand the particular challenges of the prison congregation where you serve. As you have heard numerous times now, practice the ministry of presence. Listen to understand rather than to respond. Ask questions. Listen, love, love. You can't fix them, but you can love them. And make a friend, be a friend, draw a friend to Christ.